Hello, everybody, and welcome to Friday Apocryphal Podcast, your one-stop shop for everything Friday, Apocryphal, and podcast. And boy, do we have a show for you today. Today we are doing First Maccabees 5 and 6.
Through 6.
I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong thing first, and then it just double-clicked. It was funny.
Wait.
The wheel flickered for 2 seconds.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Before it said welcome. It's fine. It's fine. There's
So we're not doing a wheel today.
No wheels.
No, not at all.
We did that already.
No wheels.
No. But we are continuing Maccabees.
Yes, we are. We're covering First Maccabees 5 through 6, as we already said.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And there's really not much to discuss before we hop into it. We have good bit of notes.
You don't want to talk about the extensive things from the introduction and their differences between First and Second Maccabees introductions?
I mean, we already kind of talked about those.
We didn't cover everything.
We'll get to them eventually. I have notes everywhere.
I got that.
Okay.
So either way, we can probably hop into it.
Okay. Let's just hop right into it then. No screwing around.
Yeah. I guess I can introduce the chapter, however.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's crazy.
I know, right? The material of... we should probably tell them what translations we're using.
Yeah, we're using the Anchor Bible.
The Anchor Bible.
First Maccabees, a new translation with introduction and commentary by Jonathan A. Goldstein.
Yes, we also have his commentary for Second Maccabees as well.
Yep.
We have Erdman's commentary on the Bible, and those are really the only books we will be using for this.
Yep.
I mean, we already
just hanging out.
We already used the Old Testament survey.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We used pretty much everything in it on.
Yeah, we really
Maccabees.
did. Yeah. So, anyways.
Yep. So
I can continue here for introducing this. The material of Chapter 5 breaks the obvious continuity of Chapters 4 and 6, as is clear from 4:7, where Antiochus hears news of the events of 426 through 61, but nothing of campaigns in Transjordan. Its insertion here is probably the work of the author, who makes an obvious connection in 5:1 and a more subtle connection with the opening attack on Idumea. Chapter 5 has obviously been carefully constructed. It has a core in verses 9 through 64, which is enclosed by two balancing pericopes. In verses 3 through 5 and 6 through 7, Judas first attacks the descendants of Esau, and we're going to talk a little bit about the implications of that. So he attacks the descendants of Esau in Idumea and the sons of Bayan, and then the Ammonites, taking Jazer. And in verses 65, 66 through 68, Judas attacks first the sons of Esau in the south, striking Hebron, and then the Philistines, attacking Azotus. The central core is even more obviously constructed, and he has like a little breakdown of it.
all right. Do you want to go into that breakdown, or do you want to?
No, he pretty much
break it
explained
down.
There's that certain core, and then the stuff around it. That's pretty much what he outlines.
All right. Well, there is an introductory note here. I mean, obviously.
Sure.
It says to check the introduction on some of the chronological difficulties of Chapter 5. But beyond that, it says the Feast of Dedication probably began on 25 Kislev of the defective calendar.
Yeah, and that's what we talked about last episode.
Yes.
Feast of Dedication.
Yes. And not on 25 Kislev of the intercalculated calendar. So they're saying October 16th, 164 BC instead of December 14th, 164.
Yeah, because the calendars were slightly different, so.
Yes. Hence, there was ample time for the events mentioned in our chapter. The campaigns against Idumea of the Acrobatine and the Baonites could have been very brief. The battle against the Ammonites need not have taken more than a few weeks. The campaign in Gilead involved crossing a torrent, hence it must have come before the dry season at the latest in April. Indeed, according to 2, chapter 12, verses 31 through 32, it was over before the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost. As soon as Judas devoted all his forces to the siege of the Acra, there could be no more campaigns against the neighboring peoples. From 6:20, we can learn only that the siege of the Acra began after 1st Nisan, or January 28th, on the defective calendar. However, from Dan 12:11, we can deduce that by June 17th, 163 BCE, the Battle of Beth Zechariah had occurred and Judas's force was under siege. The time from October 16th, 164 to sometime in May 163 is indeed ample to accommodate the events of this chapter. Pious Jews kept separate from Gentiles to avoid all contact with idolatry. Gentiles easily interpreted the Jews' self-segregation as reflecting the Jews' hatred for the human race, and reacted by hating the Jews in return. This factor, however, is not sufficient to explain why the news of Judas's victory and restoration of the temple led the neighboring nations to try and exterminate the Jews. The decisive factor was surely the Jews' claim to possess the entire area by divine right, claims based upon the Torah and reinforced by prophecies. Judas's victories could only be taken as a sign that God's favor again rested upon the Jews. Now the Jews expected and the Gentiles feared the fulfillment of the prophecies. Our author still portrays Judas as a second Joshua. Judas's contemporaries, Jewish and Gentile, probably did so too.
Yeah, to be fair, they portray Judas, and in fact, many of the heroes in this book, as second Joshua's, second David's, second Moses's, second everything.
We can understand how Gentiles came to view Jews living on their territory as a fifth column preparing the way for the new conquest of the Promised Land. Gentiles so minded would show no mercy to the Jews. Psalm 83 may date from the time of this outburst of Gentile hatred.
And that is a psalm we have already covered.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So without further ado, why don't I get into chapter 5 of 1st Maccabees.
Fantastic.
Wars with hostile neighbors. When the neighboring nations heard that the altar had been built and the temple restored as it was before, they were furious and plotted to wipe out the descendants of Jacob who lived among them. Accordingly, they began to perpetrate murders on our people so as to exterminate them. Therefore, Judas proceeded to wage war against the descendants of Esau in Idumea of the Acrabatine, inasmuch as they were belligerent Israel. And it's also broken up into 2 lines. And he inflicted upon them a heavy defeat, routing them and taking their spoils. Bearing in mind the wickedness of the Bionites, who had set up traps and roadblocks and were continually ambushing our people, Judas drove them to shut themselves up in their forts, surrounded them, ritually doomed them to destruction, and burned their forts together with all who were inside. There is a note that I wanted to bring up here about the Idumea and stuff.
Sure.
So Idumea, all the Greek manuscripts and the ancient translations are corrupt here, but Josephus's paraphrase probably reflects the correct original, which on the basis of the paraphrase may be reconstructed as en te idumai te kata ten acrobatenen. This probable original is the basis of my translation. An early scribe was bewildered by the accumulation of the letters tau, eta, kappa, and alpha, and perhaps also by the unfamiliar place name and omitted words te kata to produce the ungrammatical text of the best Greek manuscripts. The scribes responsible for this version of the manuscript,
we have to remember that it was originally in Hebrew.
Yes. Of the manuscript A and 130, knew nothing of any such Idumea, but probably knew that the ascent of Acrabin was a point that on the southern boundary of Judah, and accordingly named Idumea to Judea. The ascent of Acrabim lay to the southwest of the Dead Sea. Between it and Judas's bases lay the entire width of the main territory of Idumea. It says to reference a map, but
so on that actually, there's more. So of course, the sons of Esau, that refers to the Edomites, of course. So the sons of Esau, the biblical Edomites, are not unnaturally connected with the Hellenistic region of Idumea on Judea's south and southwestern borders. Josephus located the toparchy, I don't know. Toparchy, is that it?
It says, Josephus repeatedly mentions a district or toparchy by that name.
Okay, gotcha. Of Acrabatine in Samaria, near Shechem, which is far from Idumea, and scholars have therefore attempted to link Acrabatine with the ascent of Acrabim, and that's apparently Numbers 34:4. Near the southwest end of the Dead Sea. This identification is convenient but unconvincing. The name sits uneasily in the Greek texts, the Syriac and Latin versions amended to make passable sense. The Beonites are otherwise unknown and their location uncertain, except they lived west of the Jordan.
Yeah, there's a lot about the Beonites here. It says modern scholars have been unable to find a satisfactory answer to who they were. Our author's language seems to imitate the biblical passages on the Amalekites, 1 Samuel 15:2-3, Exodus 17:14, and Deuteronomy 25:17-18. In verse 3, our author has just treated Edomites, descendants of Esau. Amalek, too, was a descendant of Esau. The parallel at 2, chapter 10, verses 15-23, indeed calls the enemy besieged in the towers Idumeans. The best manuscripts of Josephus's paraphrase for Bayan have Sabano. Josephus's reading probably reflects the original Hebrew SB''N, or Zibion, at Genesis 36:20, 24, and 29, and at 1 Chronicles 1:38 and 40, it is a descendant of Sair. At Genesis 36:2, Sibon is the name of the grandfather of Esau's second wife. Sair is closely associated with Esau and Edom, if not identical with him. See Hebrew Genesis 25:25.
There's actually a really cool discussion on Sair in general in Thomas Romer's The Invention of God.
But this is an interesting part. The Hebrew name, Sibon, is cognate with the Arabic Dib Anun, plural Daba Inu, hyena. When Hebrew S corresponds with Arabic D, the Aramaic cognate has ayin. And so the hyena tribe would then be B'nai Aban. So that is something that is possible. Maybe a hyena tribe.
So here's, I'm going to continue the note here for the the Banites, and the rest of them too, the Akrabatin. It is tempting to think that the place name Akrabatin might originally have belonged with them, but there is no suggestion of this in the text. The Ammonites of this period lived in Amanitis, around modern Amman. The campaign described here against Timothy, with the capture of Jazir, may be identifiable with that given in 2 Maccabees 10:24 through 38. But we'll hit more on that later.
All right. Thereafter, on crossing over against the Ammonites, he found a strong and numerous force under the command of Timotheus. In a series of battles, he routed and defeated them. After capturing Yazir and its suburbs, he returned to Judea. Then the Gentiles in Gilead gathered against the Israelites who lived in their territory, intending to exterminate them. But the Israelites fled to the fortress Dathama. They sent a letter to Judas and his brothers as follows. Our Gentile neighbors have gathered against us to exterminate us. They are preparing to come and capture the fortress in which we have taken refuge. Timotheus is in command of their force. Now, therefore, come and rescue us from their hands, for many of us have fallen. All our fellow Jews who were members of Tobias's troop have been killed, and the enemy have taken captive their wives and their children and carried off their property, and have almost destroyed there a unit of 1,000 men. The letter was still being read when more messengers came from Galilee, their garments rent, to report that all heathen Galilee and men from Ptolemais and Tyre and Sidon have gathered against us to wipe us out.
So here's a note on that, actually. So Gentiles of Galilee, Ptolemais, Tyre, and Sidon, all those, Galilee had been known as Galilee of the nations for centuries. We can cross-reference Isaiah 9:1. Mm-hmm. Apparently it's a big point where people gather, a melting pot of sorts.
Yes. In America.
Babylon 9.
Yep. After Judas and the people had heard these words, a mass meeting was called to consider what they should do for their fellow Jews who were in distress and under enemy attack. Judas said to his brother Simon, "Pick your own men and go to the rescue of your fellow Jews in Galilee. My brother Jonathan and I will go to Gilead." Judas left behind in Judea Joseph, son of Zechariah, and Azariah, in command of the people, with the rest of the army as a holding force, giving them these orders: "Take charge of our people, but do not join battle with the Gentiles until we return." A party of 3,000 men went with Simon to Galilee, and one of 8,000 men with Judas to Gilead. Simon marched to Galilee, and after a series of battles, he routed the Gentiles. He pursued them to the gate of Ptolemais, killing no fewer than 3,000 of the Gentiles and taking their spoils. He took back with him the Jews of Galilee and ... probably fragment.
Fragmentary.
Yeah. Along with their wives and their children and all their property, and brought them to Judea with great rejoicing. Meanwhile, Judas Maccabeus and his brother Jonathan crossed the Jordan and marched a 3 days' journey through the wilderness, at the end of which they came upon...
Through the wilderness?
Through the wilderness.
Oh, no.
Yeah. At the end of
They
which...
never have good luck in the wilderness.
No, never. And here they don't even have a flaming pillar to guide them.
Ugh. How are they going to do this?
Or any mana.
No.
Yeah, this is
screwed.
they're not in a great place right now.
Good thing it's only 3 days. At the end of which they came upon the Nabateans, who greeted them peaceably and told them all that had happened to their fellow Jews in Gilead, that many of them were being held captive at Bosora and Bosor in Alima, Cashpho, Makhed, and Carnain, all large fortified towns, that Jews had come together in other towns of Gilead. But tomorrow the enemy were set to besiege their strongholds and capture and exterminate them all in one day.
So a note on some of these places. So Bozrah and Karnaim give us the only 2 secure points for locating Judas's activity. The other places mentioned are unknown. Judas gathers his refugees and returns to Jerusalem via Ephron, usually located east of the Jordan from Bethshan. But that's later on, anyways. But Bozrah and Karnaim, we know where those are. So
yes. Thereupon, Judas and his army made a sudden turn across the desert to Bozrah, captured the town, and put all the males to the sword. He plundered all their property and set fire to the town. From there he made a night march to the Jews' fortress. At dawn they saw before them a vast army, indeed innumerable, raising scaling ladders and siege engines in order to capture the stronghold and battling the defenders. Perceiving that the battle had begun and that the cry of the city and trumpet sound and loud shouting. Loud sharding. That's what you said. Loud sharding. I did say loud sharding. There probably was quite a lot of sharding going on. I mean, if there were an innumerable army of people with a bunch of siege
one of them
weapons,
maybe one at least, sure.
Yeah. At least one person shit themselves.
This is the quality content you guys came here for.
Yep.
Yeah, mispronunciations of that caliber. Very well done.
Wonderful. Raising scaling ladders and siege engines in order to capture the stronghold and battling the defenders. Okay, loud shouting rose heavenward. Judas said to the men of his army, "Now is the time to fight for our fellow Jews." He had his men march in 3 columns against the rear of the enemy, sounding their trumpets and crying out in prayer. When the army of Timotheus recognized that it was the Maccabees, they took to flight before him. He inflicted upon them a heavy defeat, killing no fewer than 8,000 of their men on that day. Thereupon he turned off to blank, attacked it, captured it, and killed all males within. He plundered the town and set fire to it. From there he marched and captured Cashpho.
Hey, what verse was that that break in, the text break?
The break was in verse 35.
All right.
And
I mean, you can check the note on that. I was just going to see in here if there was anything on verse 35.
Well, this says that I have left blank the name of the town because there is no way of establishing which reading is correct.
The more you know.
Is that the whole thing, or are there possible readings?
La G B and many good manuscripts at J, that's Josephus, AJ.
Okay. And that's Antiquities of the Jews.
Yeah, Antiquities of the Jews have Mela. La X has Mala. One manuscript of Josephus, W, has Mala.
Okay, so there's slightly different place names. Okay.
On the other hand, S, I assume Septuagint?
Maybe.
Here has Mafa, and A has...
No, Septuagint would be LXX.
Oh, yeah. Well, what's S? Must be a different manuscript.
Yeah.
And A has Ma'afa, and several good manuscripts of Josephus have Ma'afeh. If a name from our author's list in verse 26 had stood here, no scribe would have altered it to something else. On the other hand, if our author did the unexpected and suddenly introduced here the name of a not mentioned place, scribes would suspect a mistake and try to correct it.
Yeah, that has happened before.
Hence the readings Salema of the Lucianic Recension and Lim of SYI and Elema of 19 and Lemma of 93 do not prove that the original reading was the Elema of verse 26. So, who knows?
No one, apparently.
That's what it comes down to.
Okay.
So they captured all these other towns of Gilead.
Yeah.
Thereupon, Timotheus raised another army and encamped opposite Raphan and on the other side of the torrent. Judas sent men to spy on the camp, who reported to him, quote, "All the Gentiles in our vicinity have joined him, a very large force indeed. He has also hired Arab mercenaries to back them up. They are encamped on the other side of the torrent, ready to go into battle against you." End quote. Judas marched forth to meet them.
This is so many battles, so much war in such a short period of time.
Oh, yeah.
I want to fight about it in the middle of this? Yeah,
Of course.
bring it.
As Judas and his army approached the torrent, which was full of water, Timotheus said to the commanders of his force, "If he crosses over against us first, we shall not be able to resist him, because he will surely defeat us. If, however, he is afraid and halts on the other side of the stream, we shall cross over against him and shall defeat him." As Judas approached the torrent of water, he posted officers of the army by the torrent and ordered them, "Allow no man to halt. Let all advance into battle." Judas was the first to cross over against the enemy, with all the people following him. The Gentiles broke before them, threw away their arms, and fled into the pagan temple at Carnain. But Judas and his men captured the town and burned the temple and all within. With the fall of Carnain, the enemy
How
ceased
rude.
To be, yeah.
How rude.
Yeah. He's all about burning
How would
people
you
alive.
like it if they burn your temple away? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on mute. Sorry.
So-
Yeah, that's everybody. They always do that.
Yeah. Well, so Carnain falls. Yeah. He completely destroys them.
Yep.
And with the fall of Carnain, the enemy ceased to be able to offer resistance to Judas. Judas assembled all the Israelites of Gilead, from the humble to the great, along with their wives, their children, and their property, a very large host for the march back to the land of Judah. They marched as far as Ephron.
Yeah, no, Ephron was fine.
Oh, like Zach?
Yeah.
Huh.
I would think, yeah, it's like Zac Efron.
Yep. A large...
Just spelled differently.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's no direct translation, you know.
Yeah, I guess.
A large, heavily fortified town on the road. It was impossible to turn off either to the right or to the left. They had to pass through the town, but the people of the town would not let them through, blocking up their gates with stones. Judas sent them a peaceable message as follows: "Let us pass through your territory on our way back to our town. No one shall harm you. We shall merely pass through on foot." However, the townspeople refused to open their gates to him. Thereupon, Judas ordered the message to be passed throughout the camp. Everyone was to halt where he was. The men of the army halted, and Judas attacked the town throughout the day and throughout the night
Okay.
until it fell to him.
Okay.
He put all the males to the sword and razed the town to its foundations and plundered it and marched through the town over the bodies of the slain.
What?
Yes.
Because they wouldn't let him through. You remember that time? I think they did that in, who was it? Was it, yeah, I think it was during the Exodus, wasn't it? There was a town that they wouldn't let him through, so they killed everyone in it.
I mean, it's the only reasonable thing to do.
I'm pretty sure that was in Exodus, wasn't it?
It might
Or
have
in
been.
Numbers, something like that?
Might have been. I can't recall exactly. I'm pretty sure it happened. Perhaps.
Okay, so
there is actually a note.
Here, I can, here, so because we're talking about this specifically, I'm going to read out a section here from Erdman's, and it might elucidate some things for us, because this is about the imitations, I guess, the way the story was written, how these heroes were supposed to imitate older heroes. As before, events in this chapter echo famous events from the Hebrew scriptures. Judas, like David, attacks the Edomites, descendants of Esau, and Ammonites. Like Saul, he rescues Jews from Gilead. Like Gideon, he attacks by night, dividing his army into 3 companies and terrifying the enemy with trumpet blasts. Like Moses, he requests safe passage through enemy territory and captures Jazer and his villages. And that was apparently in Numbers 21:32.
You guys are pretty spot on there.
Yeah. Joseph and Azariah disobeyed Judas as the Israelites disobeyed Moses, and suffer similarly. The Jews are threatened with annihilation by the Gentiles, quote, in a single day, and rejoice when rescued. But Judas annihilates his Gentile enemies completely, as the law, Deuteronomy 7:2, had commanded, and Joshua had done. Joshua 11:16-20. The author again portrays Judas as a biblical hero, fulfilling the law's requirements.
Well, if we look at Deuteronomy chapter 20, verse 10, starting at verse 10, it says, when thou comest nigh into a city to fight against it, and then proclaim peace unto it. And it shall be, if it make the answer of peace, and open unto thee, then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee. And if it will make no peace with thee, but will make war against thee, then thou shalt besiege it.
Wait, so hold on. So if they are peaceable, you turn them into slaves? Well, not into slaves necessarily, but the first part you read.
Mm-hmm. Then it shall be that all the people that is found therein shall be tributaries unto thee, and they shall serve thee.
Okay, so kinda.
So I think it means that
subordinate.
Well, at least for the duration of the time that your army is in their town.
Oh, okay. That makes it okay.
I guess. So there's none of that, like, American value of, which one is it? I think it's one of the amendments that says that the military can't like
stay in your house.
Stay in your house. Yeah. Well, there's nothing like that.
Is that the third one?
Is it?
I think that's the third amendment. No?
Probably a lot later.
Probably later. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know the Constitution too good.
Oh, no.
I ain't a constitutional scholar here.
Okay.
Anyway. So, yeah. He put all the males to the sword and razed the town to its foundation and plundered it and marched through the town over the bodies of the slain. They crossed the Jordan into the broad plain by Beth-shan. Throughout the march, Judas gathered up the stragglers and spoke
Yes,
words.
it is the Third Amendment.
It is the Third Amendment.
I was right. I told you guys.
Good job.
Go on.
Throughout the march, Judas gathered up the stragglers and spoke words of encouragement to the people until he reached the land of Judah. They went up to Mount Zion in gladness and joy and offered burnt offerings, because not a man of them had fallen up to the time of their return in peace. While Judas and Jonathan were in Gilead, and Judas's brother Simon was in Galilee by Ptolemais, the commanders of the army, Joseph, son of Zechariah, and Azariah, heard of their heroic exploits in battle. They said, "Let us too win fame and go into battle against the neighboring Gentiles." They issued orders to the troops under their command and marched against Jamnia. Gorgias and his men sallied forth from the city to meet them in battle. Joseph and Azariah were routed and were pursued as far as the borders of Judea. No fewer than 2,000 men of the people of Israel fell on that day. Thus, the people suffered a grave defeat because those men, thinking to play the hero, failed to obey Judas and his brothers.
Yeah, they're the ones trying to play hero.
Yep. Indeed, they did not belong to that family of men to whom it had been granted to be agents of Israel's deliverance. The man Judas and his brothers, however, received great respect from all Israel and from all the Gentiles who heard of their fame. Crowds gathered around them with joyful shouts of praise. Again, Judas and his brothers set out on an expedition, warring against the descendants of Esau in the territory to the south. He attacked Hebron and its suburbs and destroyed its fortifications and burned its circuit of towers. Then Judas marched off to the land of the Philistines. As he was passing through Marisa, some priests fell in battle because they thought to play the hero there by rashly going into battle on their own. Judas turned off to Azotus, to the land of the Philistines. He destroyed their altars and burned the graven images of their gods and plundered the towns, and then returned to the land of Judah.
So this last section here, I'm going to read this from Erdman's. The chapter ends with another brief account of Judas's campaigns against Idumea. And in fact, he notes that it's possibly a doublet of the campaign in verse 3. And Philistia, Marissa, which is the biblical Marasha, and modern Tel Sadana, or Sandana, was an important Hellenistic town later captured by John Hyrcanus. First Maccabees has little respect for the priests, quote, who wished to do a brave deed. I'm guessing that's the hero quote that we talked about. Success in battle was reserved for the Maccabean family. Azotus, Ashdod, was an important city from the Middle Bronze Age to the Roman and Byzantine periods. The author of First Maccabees emphasizes Judas's destruction of its pagan cult. It was important to him to demonstrate Judas's religious devotion as well as his military success.
Well, hold on a minute there, because this says that for that bit about them not being the family of men to whom it had been granted the ability to deliver Israel or whatever, it says our author first borrows the language of 1 Samuel 4:10 and 17, a context which likewise has Israel suffering from a grievous defeat in the land of the Philistines because of the sin of two men, the sons of Eli, members of a rejected line of priests. Our author then refers to the Hasmoneans by the phrase Zri Nisim, seeds of men, which I've rendered family of men. In the Hebrew Bible, the phrase is only used in connection with Samuel, the divinely elected successor of Eli. The phrase may have had eschatological connotations in Hasmonean circles.
You know, if they said sons of men, then... Okay, wait, can you read the Hebrew portion of that again, if you can find it?
It was Zer Nisim, seeds of men.
Seeds of men, okay. I guess that is different.
It's kind of like sons of men, but he says that it might have had the same kind of connotations in Hasmonean circles.
Okay. I have no idea.
Yep.
Either way, that is, I think, the end of chapter 5, right?
Yep. And if you're enjoying the stream so far, like, share, comment, subscribe, wish list, Patreon, etc.
Yeah, you got the stuff. We'll shill at the end too. But either way,
So,
I'll
why don't
continue.
we get into chapter 6 then? Also, I just noticed that the phrasing that we have is 1 Mac on the screen.
Yeah.
So we're getting into the Big Mac chapters here.
Yeah, we're getting to the Big Mac. Yep, that's where we are.
Yep. Second Maccabees is now Big Maccabees.
Do you know what number a Big Mac is on the menu, Ruben?
It's a number 1.
Wow.
Why wouldn't
Everybody
it be?
knows that.
Because I don't order that.
It's the most popular.
Okay, but everyone
item.
should still
Well,
know
it's
that.
Not the most popular item on the menu. The most popular item on the menu is, well, when I was working there was the McDouble, but the most commonly thing that was given to people was fries. It's just that fries come with
Everything, yeah. Either way, here I have an introductory note. So a cuneiform document from Babylon shows that the news of the death of Antiochus IV reached Babylon in the 9th month. That's a Kislev of 148 of the Seleucid. Of the Seleucid Babylonian calendar, 164. I thought those were the separate ones. I don't remember. Okay. The news probably became known in Jerusalem on January 28th, 163, since the Feast of Dedication was probably celebrated according to the Jews' own defective calendar. We talked about that in the first episode of this. Antiochus' death probably did come after the dedication of the new altar. It is unlikely, however, that the news from Jerusalem was urgent enough or could travel fast enough to reach the king before he died. Jews and pagans both delighted in imagining how retribution came upon the royal temple robber. If Antiochus, on his deathbed, was aware only that he had been foiled at a pagan temple in Elymas, which was a region, not a city, nothing would lead him to regret his successful plundering of the temple in Jerusalem and his persecution of the Jews. Our author, or his Jewish source, would have been embarrassed if only the victory of the idol of Elymas had brought Antiochus to die. Hence, for this Jewish observer, Antiochus IV's death had to have a cause emanating from Jerusalem and Judea. It must have been news of Judas's victories and restoration of the temple. Thus, our author, or his Jewish source, reasoning a priori, supplied the story of the messenger bringing the news from Judea.
So it didn't even happen. Okay, thanks.
Well, it would have happened in a different order.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I understand.
Yeah, but it was important.
It could have been premature.
Yeah, it was important for the author to have it in this order.
So the first bit that I'm going to have commentary on from here is going to be at the end of verse 17.
Okay.
I'm going to be right.
Look at you with your walking away. This guy. Can you believe him? But see, this way we can talk about him and he can't hear us. Because sound doesn't travel past this microphone. Either way, let's get started. The death of Antiochus IV. Meanwhile, as King Antiochus was marching through the inland territories, he heard that in Elymas and in Persis there was a city famous for its wealth in gold and silver. The temple there was said to be very rich, containing golden helmets and breastplates and shields left there by King Alexander, son of Philip the Macedonian, the first to rule over the Hellenistic Empire. Antiochus came and tried to take the city and plunder it, but failed because his intention became known to the people of his city. When they stood against him for battle, he fled and with great chagrin withdrew to make his way back to Babylonia. A messenger reached him in Persis with the news that his armies with the news that his armies, which had marched into the land of Judah, had been routed. Oh no. That Lysias had set out at the head of a strong force and had been repulsed by the Jews, who had gained in arms and in wealth, and especially through the abundant plunder which they had taken from the armies they had defeated. That the Jews had destroyed the abomination which he had built upon the altar in Jerusalem, and they had surrounded the temple as it was before with high walls, and also their own town of Bethzer. So the abomination, I'm guessing that's supposed to be the abomination of desolation, which was also recorded about in Daniel as well. I'm going to check the note here quick. Let's see, for verse 7. All right, I guess they don't really have that much on it. Well, I mean, they reference to a note we already went over, so either way. When the king heard the news, he was thunderstruck and so deeply dismayed that he took to his bed and sank into melancholia because his plots had been foiled. So he's going to die of sadness and depression. He's going to cry himself to death.
Oh, no.
There he lay for many days as his great distress grew worse. Finally, he realized that he was dying. He summoned all his friends and said to them, "Sleep has fled from my eyes, and the weight of anxiety has broken my heart." So, really, he's just dying of sleep deprivation.
Yeah.
It's been 10 days and I'm dying. Dude, go to bed.
Well, don't sleep for 10 days and see how that works for you.
I have said to myself, how deep I have sunk in distress. How great is the tempest which has now come upon me, kind though I was and popular in my realm. Now, however, I remember the wicked deeds which I perpetrated in Jerusalem, which I took all the silver and gold vessels there, and for no cause sent orders to exterminate the inhabitants of Judah. I have come to understand that because of these deeds, these evils have come upon me as I die in great agony on foreign soil. And I'm pretty sure dying on foreign soil is just always a bad thing.
Always.
Yeah.
You should be near your father's tombs when you die.
Well,
because
that's one
that
thing.
means that your family or someone has to transport your corpse over a long distance, which can, I mean, not only is that a pain, but it can potentially cause disease wherever you go.
Yeah, and also in Egypt, it was important to die in Egypt, because if you died outside of Egypt, you couldn't really get to the afterlife, because the afterlife, you had to be in Egypt to get into the afterlife.
Okay.
Yeah, because their thing was based on especially their tomb preparations. They were based on what direction the body was facing, or what the stuff in the tomb was, but it had to be in Egypt. It had to be in Egyptian soil.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it ain't gonna work.
Oof. Finish off this.
Yeah,
section.
sure. I'll finish off this section, but I did want to take a note here because maybe he has something on the soil.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So our author did not know that Antiochus still may have held Tobiah as his own. In our author's day, it was subject to the Parthians. Huh, okay. Let's continue. He summoned Philip, one of his friends, and gave him power over all his kingdom. Wow. So easy.
Nice.
Yeah. Handing over to him his diadem, his diadem. I don't know what that even means. His robe and his ring for Philip to bring to his son Antiochus, of whom Philip was to be the guardian until the boy was ready to rule. Okay.
So he hands him his crown jewels.
Yeah, his kingly stuff, and he's saying, "Hold on to this. You're going to rule until my son can rule."
Mm-hmm.
Thereupon, King Antiochus died in the year 149, which corresponds to a different year, obviously, because this is on a different calendar.
Right.
So I'm sure he has a note on that. Okay, so it would have included the months of October through December of 164 BCE. When Lysias received the news that the king had died, he took the late king's very young son Antiochus, of whom he had been the guardian, and made him king in his place, giving him the name Eupator. So that's weird because he instead gave all the... Okay, so he gave the power to his friend Philip.
Mm-hmm.
But Lysias was like, no, I'm just making him king instead? Your son Antiochus, the king instead? Is that what happened here?
Yeah, even though he's a kid.
Okay, so here's actually something interesting here for verse 15. For Philip to bring his son Antiochus. The correct meaning is preserved only in the Lucianic recension and in Josephus, both of which have his son Antiochus in the dative case. The other witnesses to the text can be rendered for Philip to bring up his son Antiochus. In these, his son Antiochus is in the accusative case. The Greek agegion can mean both bring and bring up, depending on the case of the noun. The Greek scribes were probably led astray by the context. Quote, be the guardian of, in Greek, is trephien, literally nourish. Another connotation of trephien is to bring up a small child. In contrast to trephien, agegion can mean the formal training of a school-age child. Hence, the presence of trephien in the context led the scribes to expect agegion to mean educate, so that consciously or unconsciously they altered his son Antiochus from the dative to the accusative. The resultant text was illogical in putting the formal training before the bringing up. A decisive argument against the reading of the scribes is the fact that agegion never means bring up or educate in Greek translations from the Hebrew Bible. Moreover, the reading of the scribes is hard to reconcile with what precedes, since it is hard to see how the diadem, robe, and ring would be of use in bringing up the young Antiochus, but easy to see how they would serve to legitimize the young Antiochus's succession and the power of his guardian Philip if Philip conveyed them to the young heir. Okay, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so apparently that means crown. Okay, that makes sense. And then on the note about Lysias here, when Antiochus IV, with Antiochus IV dead, Lysias refused to yield power to Philip without a fight. Indeed, with the helpless boy king in his power, Lysias was to prevail. According to Appian, guessing that's another historian, I'm not 100% sure. Antiochus V was 9 years old when he became full king in late 146 BCE. According to Porphyry, Antiochus V was then 12 years old. However, Antiochus IV's only wife was probably Laodice, the widow of Seleucus IV. If so, Antiochus V could have been born in 174 BCE at the earliest. The tradition reflected in Porphyry may have arisen from confusing the birth date of Antiochus V with that of the other child of King Antiochus, the son of Seleucus IV. Okay, so that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the epithet conferred on the boy king, Eupator, it means born of a noble sire.
Great.
Anyway, so you said you had a note on this section.
Yes. So this section,
after all of the notes I just read,
1 through 17, combines material based on the author, based on information from some Seleucid sources, 1 through 4 and 14 through 16, with the author's own editorial linkage, 5 through 7, and romantic invention, 8 through 13. Verses 5 through 7 summarize 338 through 461, And verses 8 through 13 give the author's picture of what, in the circumstances, Antiochus ought to have thought. At least he makes Antiochus regret some of his past acts. His view of Antiochus is less uncharitable than that of 2 Maccabees 9. For a different view of Antiochus, see Polybius' Histories. Polybius says that Antiochus, in need of money, attacked the temple of Artemis in the region of Elymaeus, biblical Elam, from Isaiah 21:2. Our author wrongly makes Elymaeus a city, not a region. The local people repulsed him, and he retreated. He fell ill and died at Tabai on the borders of Persia and Media. First Maccabees appears to follow Polybius in essentials. Second Maccabees 1:10 through 13 and 9:1 through 29 give a more dramatic version of the story. Antiochus's real concern at this time was not, as First Maccabees suggests, the rebellion in Judea, but the problem of succession. Antiochus, apparently nominated as regent and guardian of his son and heir, Antiochus V, not Lysias, to whom he had previously entrusted Eupator, but Philip, a friend, and courtier. 2 Maccabees 9:29, however, does not suggest that Philip was appointed, though Goldstein suggests that the Philip of 2 Maccabees 9:29 is a different Philip. Lysias...
Yeah, I think there's... I think I have that underlined, right?
You do have it underlined.
Okay.
It's Goldstein 1984, 372 through 73.
It's that one right there. Yeah. So if we want that, we could probably read the section, but it's definitely in there.
Well, maybe we'll get to that when we go through the bit in 2 Maccabees where they talk about Philip in there, because it's not really relevant to this point.
Sure. Okay.
Lysias, who had possession of Antiochus's son, on hearing of Antiochus's death, naturally usurped Philip's place as regent and guardian.
Which you would think is kind of weird, because the king himself had said that had given this this guardianship to Philip.
Yeah. On the evidence of a Seleucid king list found in Babylon, Antiochus's death was reported at Babylon sometime between 19th to 20th November and 18th and 19th December 164 BC.
Yeah, and that's the thing I noted before, right?
Yeah. It says year 149 indicates that First Maccabees dating here is based on a Seleucid era beginning in spring or autumn 312 BC.
Great. Let's continue then, shall we?
Yes.
The expedition of Antiochus V and Lysias. The men of the Acra had been besetting Israel in the neighborhood of the sanctuary as they continually sought to do evil and give aid to the Gentiles. Accordingly, Judas planned to wipe them out. He assembled the entire people to put them under siege. The people gathered and laid siege to the Acra in the year 150. Constructing a siege wall and siege engines. Siege engines, just big war machines.
Yeah, they mentioned that before.
Your catapults,
Did they?
towers.
I figured it'd be catapults, right?
Ballista,
Trebuchets.
Well, maybe. And it's a little early for trebuchets, but they had them.
Well, who knows what they slapped together?
A war machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, some sort of war machine.
Like you chop down a tree and then you use it to ram the city gates.
Yeah, just like that. Yeah, I'm sure it was just something like that.
Maybe
Either
they
way.
added spikes. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Some of the men of the Acra slipped through the siege lines, joined by some wicked Israelites. They went to the king and said, "How long must we wait for you to do justice and avenge our comrades?" I feel like this is part of a psalm. In fact, didn't we just go over that psalm? How long will you wait to do justice?
Oh man, there's so many of them that use like basically the same phrasing.
Sure, yeah.
I'm sure it's in there somewhere.
I mean, I'll check here. What is that? 22. Is there no note on 22, or is it just incredibly long?
It may just be incredibly long.
I can't even find a beginning to that. That's ridiculous.
Is that the introductory note still, or is it in the verses?
No, it's already in the verses, but okay, whatever. I'll just have to look later.
I guess.
Yeah. Anyways, we were willing to serve your father and follow his instructions and obey his commands. As a result, our own countrymen have become our enemies. Indeed, they have killed as many of us as they could find and have been plundering our property. Not only against us have they raised their hands, but also against all your domains. And now, at this very moment, they are holding the Acra in Jerusalem under siege and mean to take it. They have also fortified the temple and Beth-Zur. If you do not act promptly to stop them, they will accomplish even more, and you will not be able to suppress them. So basically, continue the work of your father?
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
You don't have a choice.
Yeah. When the king heard this, he was furious. He assembled all his friends who were commanders of his army, as well as the masters of the horse. From other kingdoms and from the Mediterranean islands, he got mercenary troops. His army numbered 100,000 military infantry and 20,000 cavalry and 32 trained war elephants, which they probably got from India.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, Alexander went all the way to India, right? He was doing trading, I think. Yeah.
He went to India.
Yeah, doing plenty of trading over there.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he got some elephants.
Definitely.
So anyways, a bunch of war elephants. They marched by way of Idumea and laid siege to Beth-Zur, keeping it under attack for many days. When the Seleucid force constructed siege engines, the besieged made a sortie and burned them. What the hell is a sortie?
You know, the thing that you use to not mix it up?
Shut up.
I don't know, but after this point, at the point for many days, right? It says at this point, we should probably read verse 39 through 40, which seem to be misplaced after verse 48.
Ooh, okay. Which verse is meant to be placed after verse 48?
It says at the end of verse 31.
Oh, okay.
At this point, we should probably read verses 39 through 40, which seem misplaced after verse 48.
Okay, well, let's check 39 and 40.
Mm-hmm.
When the sun began to shine upon the golden and silver shields, the mountains began to shine from their reflected light as they flashed like fiery torches. Part of the king's army was deployed over the heights and part over the low ground. They marched forward confidently and in good order. That was 39 and 40. Huh. All right, well, I'm just going to go back to reading the rest of it.
Yeah.
So anyways,
we're at like 32 or 30.
Yeah. Okay. So they besieged, made a sortie, and burned them, fighting courageously. Judas withdrew from the Acra and encamped at Beth-Zechariah, blocking the road ahead of the camp of the king. The king had his army make an impetuous early morning dash down the road to Beth Zechariah. Drawn up, ready for battle, they sounded their trumpets. They displayed grape and mulberry juice to the elephants to prepare them for battle. Because I guess that's just what you do.
That really gets them riled up, apparently. They like the grape juice, but the mulberry juice is similar to an alcohol for us. It's poisonous. It won't kill them, but it drives them a little crazy.
Okay. Oh. Or like catnip.
Yeah, and also Justin says sortie is a deployment or dispatch of one military unit. Kind of cool.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never heard that word before. Not in my life. The great beasts were disturbed among the phalanxes. I think those are supposed to be the elephants, right? By each elephant were placed 1,000 men wearing coats of chainmail and bronze helmets. A special force of 500 cavalry also was assigned to each beast. The assigned troops would be wherever the beast was at the moment. Wherever it went, they went too, never leaving it. Each elephant bore an armored and roofed wooden howdah fastened to it by straps. On each elephant were 2 warriors who would fight while riding, and in addition, the elephant's mahout. Also don't know what that is.
Towers on elephants' backs are well known from ancient illustrations.
Sure.
They carried 4 soldiers, not 30 or 32 as in some manuscripts. The error arose from an early misreading of a Greek delta for a lambda.
So this has this says 2 though. Or 2 warriors.
Who knows?
So what's versus that? 37? Let's see what Goldstein
37.
says.
Well, there's nothing wrong with 2. It's not 32.
Okay. So the 2 warriors on each elephant I derive from the reading 32. Okay, so his own thing was he saw 32, thought that couldn't be right, and just got rid of the 30. Okay. But then Erdman's is of the belief that they misread a letter, which I think is probably a better answer. Instead of, like, why would somebody add a 3 to that?
Right.
So, okay. Yeah, I think
let me know when you get to the end of verse 49.
Okay. What was that? You have the 2 warriors. The remainder of the cavalry, the commander posted on the 2 flanks of the army to intimidate the enemy and protect his own phalanxes. And then it goes to the part that we already read with the shining shields, fiery torches. Part of the king's army was deployed over the heights and part over the low ground. They marched forward confidently and in good order. I feel like that probably makes more sense here, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know.
Eerdmans was totally wrong about this.
Or maybe we just misread something?
It literally said the word for word what I told you.
So. Weird. Okay. Or perhaps maybe he already fixed it in this version.
Oh, maybe.
Who knows?
Who knows?
But I can check that too afterwards. The shouting of the vast army and the din of its advance and the clashing of their arms struck all with fear, for the king's army was indeed very great and powerful. When Judas and his army approached and joined battle, 600 men from the king's army were slain. Damn. Eliezer, Auran, I think that's how you pronounce it, Eliezer Auran, caught sight of one of the elephants, which were wearing royal armor, one which was taller than all the others, thinking that the king was riding it. Eliezer gave his life to save his people and win eternal fame. Boldly he dashed into the midst of the phalanx at the elephant, slaying men right and left as he cut the enemy down on both sides of his path. going in underneath the elephant, he stabbed it to death, whereupon the elephant fell to the ground on top of him, killing him there. Well, yeah, that was a really bad decision, man.
Mm-hmm. You just stabbing. Dodge, come on.
Yeah, it says here, the phalanx introduced by Philip of Macedon and his son Alexander the Great consisted of heavy infantry in 16 parallel columns, 16 ranks deep, armed with swords and long spears. Their weight and close order made them invincible until challenged by the Roman legion. And for a single foot soldier to penetrate deeply into their close order was a real achievement. However, the light armored Jews stood no chance against the phalanx in open battle. And
I mean, especially if one's going to fall on you.
Yeah. And the daring but mistaken bravery of Judas's brother Eleazar could hardly save the day.
Yeah, bad idea, man.
Yeah.
All right, so anyways, this elephant just fell on a dude.
Yeah.
Perceiving the power of the empire and the warlike spirit of the imperial army, Judas and his men withdrew. Thereupon, the king's army marched after them to Jerusalem, and the king encamped against Judea and against Mount Zion. However, he made a truce with the defenders of Beth-zur, so that they withdrew from the town, inasmuch as they had no store of food. They had no store of food there for withstanding a siege, because it was the sabbatical year when the land was left fallow. So that was the end of 49.
Okay, so hunger compelled the Jews to agree to terms and evacuate the town because they had no provisions there to withstand the siege since it was a sabbatical year. The sabbatical year for the institution, see Exodus 23:10 through 11, Leviticus 25:2 through 7, began autumn 164 BC. No crops would have been sown and reaped in spring and summer 163 BC, and the harvest of summer 164 would already have been eaten. There was therefore no food to be had either from stores or from the fields, either for besieged or besiegers. It made sense for both sides to make peace. 2 Maccabees 13:18 through 22 gives a very different picture of this event, suggesting that the Seleucid attack was a failure, at least until helped by a Jewish informer. After the fall of Beth-zur, the Seleucid forces were free to march north towards Jerusalem. Judas blocked their way at Beth-Zechariah, Kirbet Zechariah, 9 kilometers north of Beth-zur.
All right, I'm going to continue then.
Yep.
And also, no, I could not find a note about the placement of that verse that you were talking about.
Oof.
Which is a real bummer. I was really hoping there was something there. There was not.
Yes.
Anyways, thereupon the king occupied Beth-zur and stationed there a garrison to hold it. He besieged the temple for many days, setting up against it a siege wall and siege engines, including launchers of incendiary missiles, catapults for hurling stones, scorpion nets for hurling darts and slings. The besieged, too, devised engines to counter those of the enemy, so that the siege continued for many days. However, there was no longer food in the bins because it was the 7th year, and also because the refugees who had been evacuated to Judea from among the Gentiles had consumed what was left of the stores. Hence, a few men were left in the sanctuary because hunger pressed the defenders hard. The rest dispersed, each to his own place. So hold on, did they just tell us twice that they surrendered because of that?
Yeah, they surrendered.
Yes.
And they surrendered.
That's gotta...
They don't have much of a choice.
Well, I get that, but why'd they tell us twice?
Maybe it happened twice.
They had to justify it real hard.
It's not like they even moved. Did they? Did I miss the part where they moved?
I didn't hear or read anything about it.
I kind of understand this as the place itself surrendered and then the temple surrendered independently. Like they had to fight up to the temple, and then some of them went home, others still defended it. I don't know, something like that. Even though there wasn't food.
Maybe.
Okay, so hold on. It said that they withdrew out of the town. Oh, and then they went to... Wait, but that was Beth-Zur. So they left Beth-Zur.
Yeah, Judas blocked their way at Beth Zechariah, Kirbet Zarkiah, 9 kilometers north of Beth-Zur.
Yes, so they had secondary surrender.
Yeah, they had to leave Beth-Zur at some point. Oh, my God.
Okay. This is just a shit show.
Oof.
Lysias, however, received word that Philip, whom King Antiochus had appointed before he died to be the guardian of his son, no, he didn't, of his son Antiochus until he was ready to reign, had returned from Persis and Media, accompanied by the late king's expeditionary force, and was seeking to take control of the empire. In his dismay, Lysias decided upon withdrawal, which is weird. They were doing so well. To the king and to the army commanders and the soldiers, he said, "We grow weaker day by day. We are short of food. The place we are besieging is strong. The affairs of the empire are demanding our attention." They got better stuff to do, basically. "Let us, therefore, now grant a truce to these men and make peace with them and with their entire nation. Let us allow them to follow their own laws as formerly, for our violation of their laws so enraged them that they have done all this. The king and his staff approved. The king sent the besieged a proposal to make peace. They accepted. The king and his staff took oath in their presence. In return, the men came out of their stronghold. Thereupon, the king entered Mount Zion. On seeing how strongly the site was fortified, he went back on the oath which he had sworn. By his orders, the wall surrounding it was torn down. Thereafter, the king departed in haste." Wow. On his return to Antioch, he found Philip in control of the city. Oh, no. The king and his army attacked Philip and took the city by force. Jeez, that moved fast.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, so Lysias proposes that the Jews be allowed to return to the status quo, in which they live by their own laws, on the condition that they evacuate the fortified sanctuary. This proposal may be reflected in the letter of Antiochus V to Lysias given in 2 Maccabees 11:22 through 27.
You know, it's kind of, okay, so Philip, back at home, is real butthurt.
Yeah.
Because it should have been him.
Yeah.
Who was, I guess, raising Antiochus. So while Antiochus and Lysias are away, he takes over the town there. But while, so they're besieging Beth-Zur, right? And pretty much the second they get a chance, they say, "Fuck the deal. The deal sucks. We're killing all of you. We're taking over everything." Well, they didn't say they're killing all of you, but they're taking over. They tore down the walls. So real bummer there. Very failed attempt at a peace negotiation or victory. So big day for Antiochus there, winning 2 or 3 battles depending.
Yeah.
Because
2 battles and a skirmish.
Okay.
Let's go with that.
Okay, 2 battles and a skirmish. Yeah, good day for him.
Great day for him.
Yeah. Other than that, I got nothing other than that. How do you? What about you?
I think that's it. That's it.
That's it.
All right. That's the end of our broadcast.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for watching, for whatever reason you decided to watch this. If you like what we do and want to support us, you can support us on Patreon. You can get a lot of cool rewards. You could even be on the show.
You could be on this show.
Yeah, you could. Or Atheist Sunday School, whatever. It doesn't matter. You can also get a t-shirt from our Teespring. Or perhaps you would like to follow us on Facebook and Twitter, where that is perfectly free to do that. Or you can go to our Amazon wish list, because we got a lot of good books on there, and we can use them for sources.
Or you can flood our comment section in all of our videos with comments.
Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah.
Viewer engagement
does help us a lot.
It does. I think that's all the shilling, right?
In fact, Justin McClure, you win the prize of the day. You get a gold star because I see your name in the chat more than anyone else's right now. And that's good viewer engagement.
Okay, it is good viewer engagement. Either way, we're heading out. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. To anything that we didn't mention, all of our links are in the description below. And we will see you on Sunday.